The morning sun casts a golden hue over the vast farmland, stretching as far as the eye can see. Dew glistens on the tall stalks of wheat, and the crisp morning air carries the scent of damp earth. Birds chirp their morning songs, and the faint rustle of leaves in the distance speaks of a soft breeze passing through. At the heart of this rural paradise stands Ethan Cole, a man who moves with the precision of someone who has lived 2 lifetimes. His calloused hands grip the wooden handle of a hoe as he tends to his crops, his movements methodical yet effortless. To the outside world, he is just another farmer, but to those who know him well, there is something in the way he carries himself, a quiet strength, an unshakable presence. Inside his modest farmhouse, subtle remnants of his past tell a deeper story. A framed military medal hangs on the wall, its shine slightly dulled with age. An old duffel bag, packed and ready, rests in the corner of his room, untouched but never forgotten. His routine is unusually disciplined. His mornings start with intense physical workouts, and his evenings end with a habit of scanning the perimeter of his land. Yet, despite his mysterious past, Ethan has found peace here. The land is more than just soil and crops. It is his refuge, his fresh start away from the chaos of the world he once knew. But peace is a fragile thing, and trouble has a way of finding those who try to escape it. The town, just a few miles down the road, is quiet on most days. Locals gather at the small diner for coffee and conversation, exchanging pleasantries and the latest town gossip. But today, something is different. A roaring symphony of engines shatters the morning calm. A pack of bikers, clad in black leather and dust from the road, rumble into town like a storm on the horizon. Their presence is imposing, their movements deliberate as they park their motorcycles outside the gas station. People whisper as they watch from a distance. They've been here before, and wherever they go, trouble follows. One of the bikers, a man with a snake tattoo winding up his arm, leans against his bike, lighting a cigarette. He surveys the town with an arrogant smirk, his gaze lingering on the farmland in the distance. Nice little place, he mutters to his crew. Plenty of open space, just waiting for someone to take it. His men chuckle, but there's an edge to their laughter. This isn't just a random stop. They have their eyes on something. Back at the farm, Ethan goes about his day, unaware of the eyes watching him from a distance. His life before this was different, structured, dangerous, filled with battles most men wouldn't survive. He was once part of an elite military unit, trained in tactics and combat, sent on missions that never made the news. But when the wars ended, and the dust settled, he found himself drawn to a simpler existence. The farm became his home, not just in a physical sense, but in a way that grounded him. The land gave him purpose, something he never found on the battlefield. Among the few people he allows close is Sarah, the town's veterinarian, who often stops by to check on his livestock. There's an unspoken understanding between them. She sees through the walls he puts up, but she never pushes. Then there's Joe, the old general store owner, who knew Ethan's father and has watched over the farm since Ethan was a boy. He sees the fire in Ethan's eyes, the one he tries so hard to suppress. "You can leave the battlefield, son," Joe had once told him, "but it don't ever leave you." Ethan didn't argue. He knew Joe was right. And soon, that past he's been running from will come knocking. The first real encounter happens just before sunset. Ethan is working near the barn when he hears the unmistakable growl of motorcycles approaching. He doesn't react immediately. He finishes hammering a loose board into place before finally turning around. 4 of the bikers have pulled onto his land, their engines still running as they park in a messy line. The one with the snake tattoo steps forward, exuding confidence. His name is Riker, and he's the kind of man who thrives on intimidation. "Nice place you got here," Riker says, his tone dripping with false friendliness. Ethan wipes his hands on a rag, watching them carefully. No fear, no nervousness, just cold, calculating observation. "Not looking to sell," Ethan replies simply. Riker chuckles. "Who said anything about selling?" The golden hues of the setting sun painted long shadows across the fields as Ethan worked near the barn. The rhythmic sound of his hammer against the worn wooden planks was the only noise in the quiet evening air. A man at peace with his solitude. Then he heard it, the deep, unmistakable growl of motorcycles slicing through the stillness. He didn't react immediately, didn't tense, didn't rush. Instead, he finished driving the last nail into place, giving it one final, firm tap before turning around. For motorcycles rumbled onto his property, their riders exuding an air of dominance as they parked in a crooked, careless formation, a deliberate show of disrespect. The leader stepped forward first. His presence alone spoke volumes, a man who fed off intimidation, who reveled in the way people shrank under his gaze. His leather jacket bore the emblem of his crew, and a coiled snake tattoo slithered up his neck, its inked fangs bared in silent warning. Ethan met his stare with a quiet, unreadable expression. No fear, no uncertainty, just cold, calculating observation. Riker smirked. "Nice place you got here." His tone carried an edge of false friendliness, like a blade hidden behind a handshake. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, taking his time before answering. A deliberate pause. A message in itself. "Not looking to sell," he said simply. Riker chuckled, the sound low and full of amusement. His men grinned, exchanging looks. "Who said anything about selling?" One of the bikers picks up a handful of soil, letting it sift through his fingers. Good land. Could be useful to the right people. Ethan's jaw tightens, but his voice remains calm. "You and your boys done sightseeing?" Riker steps closer, trying to see if he can get a reaction. "We're just being friendly, old man. Maybe we'll come by again. Maybe we'll bring more friends next time." The challenge is clear, but Ethan doesn't bite. He doesn't need to. Instead, he meets Riker's gaze with an unsettling stillness, a look that makes even the toughest men pause. "You step onto my land again," Ethan says evenly. "You won't like what happens next." For a moment, there's silence. The wind whistles through the fields, and the world seems to hold its breath. Then Riker grins, amused rather than threatened. He claps Ethan on the shoulder, a touch too firm, a warning in itself, before turning back to his bike. "See you around, farmer." As the bikers roar away, Ethan doesn't move. His eyes stay on the horizon, already knowing this isn't over. Days pass, but the unease lingers. Ethan isn't the type to let emotions cloud his judgment, but he knows trouble when he sees it, and trouble always comes back. Late one night, the sound of engines breaks the stillness of the farm. Ethan, already awake, watches from his porch as dark figures move through his land. He doesn't interfere. Not yet. By morning, the damage is clear. His fence is broken, several wooden posts torn from the ground. The tires on his old truck are slashed, deep knife wounds in the rubber. His livestock is let loose, his cows and horses scattered across the fields. Ethan stands in the middle of it all, his expression unreadable. Anyone else would be furious, but Ethan doesn't waste energy on pointless emotions. Instead, he walks to his barn and starts working. He reinforces the fence. He fixes the truck. He rounds up his animals, one by one, without a word of complaint. This isn't surrender. This is patience. And patience is what keeps men like him alive. Word spreads fast in a small town. By the time Ethan makes his way into town for supplies, the whispers are already flying. At the general store, Joe shakes his head as he hands Ethan a fresh coil of barbed wire. Heard about your trouble. Ethan doesn't respond. He just starts loading supplies into his truck. Joe lowers his voice. Look, son, these guys, they ain't worth the fight. At that moment, Sheriff Dawson steps onto the porch, arms crossed. A good man, but one who knows the limits of his authority. Ethan, the sheriff sighs. I know what you're thinking, and I'm telling you, it ain't worth it. These boys aren't just some punks passing through. They've done worse in other towns. Ethan leans against the truck, finally speaking. Then why are they still breathing? The sheriff exhales through his nose. Because most folks know when to back down. The unspoken words hang heavy in the air. But Ethan isn't most folks. Sarah, who's been listening nearby, finally speaks up. And what? Just let them take whatever they want. Dawson shifts uncomfortably. I didn't say that. Ethan locks eyes with the sheriff. Then what are you saying? A long pause. Dawson finally looks away. Just be smart. Ethan doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. He already knows what he has to do. Ethan doesn't waste time. He's lived through too many wars to ignore the signs. Without a word, he begins making subtle but deliberate preparations. The barn doors are reinforced, metal plates discreetly added where wood would be too weak. He sharpens his tools, ensuring every blade, every instrument, is in top condition. A few key supplies disappear from town, quietly bought up. Extra fuel, extra nails, rope, and ammunition. One night, as he works in the barn, his hands move automatically, muscle memory guiding him as he knots a rope with practiced ease. The desert. A mission gone sideways. An ambush. Ethan and his team, trapped in a hostile village, outnumbered and outgunned. They hadn't panicked. They had prepared. They had set traps, created distractions, controlled the battlefield before the enemy even knew what hit them. The memory fades. Ethan exhales, focusing back on the present. The principles never change. He doesn't want this fight, but if it comes to him, he will finish it. The next time the bikers show up, it's different. No more casual intimidation. This time, they mean business. They roll up in greater numbers, at least 8 or 9 of them, their engines growling like a pack of wolves marking their territory. Riker is at the front. his snake tattoo twisting as he cracks his knuckles. His smirk is gone. This isn't a game anymore. You're making this hard on yourself, old man, he calls out. Ethan, standing on his porch, doesn't respond. He just watches, waiting, calculating. One of the bikers steps forward and tosses something at Ethan's feet. It's Sarah's veterinary bag. A cold silence fills the air. Riker tilts his head, watching Ethan's expression. She got in the way, he says, almost bored. Had to remind her who runs things around here. Ethan's jaw tightens. Sarah was innocent. One of the other bikers grins. She's lucky we let her go at all. Ethan steps forward. Slowly, deliberately. His voice is calm, but the air around him seems to shift. You had your fun, he says. Now leave. Riker laughs, stepping closer. Or what? You gonna call the sheriff? Ethan's next words send a chill through the group. No, he says. I'm going to bury you. A flicker of hesitation. Just for a second. Then Riker laughs again, slapping one of his men on the shoulder. Hear that, boys? The old man's got some fight in him. The others chuckle, but there's something different now. A feeling none of them can quite shake. Ethan isn't mad. He isn't scared. He's ready. And for the first time, the bikers start to wonder the night is heavy with silence. No wind. No crickets. Just waiting. Ethan stands on his porch, eyes scanning the treeline. They'll come soon. He's sure of it. And then, it begins. A roaring explosion shatters the quiet. His barn is on fire. The flames dance in the darkness, a beacon of destruction. The bikers howl in triumph, revving their engines as they storm onto the property. From their perspective, this is it. The final nail in the coffin. They think they've won. They couldn't be more wrong. Because Ethan isn't running. He's waiting. The first biker to wander too far from the pack never sees it coming. One step too close. Snap. The wire trap yanks his legs out from under him, sending him crashing face first into the dirt. Before he can even scream, a boot presses down on his throat. Ethan looms over him, face like stone. One precise strike, and the biker is out cold. And he's just getting started. The second biker notices too late that something's wrong. He moves toward the barn, but the second his foot touches the dirt boom, he's down. A carefully rigged explosion, a simple flash bang Ethan had crafted from old supplies, blinds and disorients him. Before he can recover, Ethan is there. A single blow, a broken jaw, and another one down. Inside the house, two bikers sneak in, laughing. They don't laugh for long. The second they step onto the wooden floor, it caves. Ethan had weakened a specific section of the floorboards, knowing intruders would come through the back door. They drop into the cellar below, landing hard. Before they can climb out, the hatch slams shut. Locked. Trapped. Panicking. Ethan doesn't even waste his time with them. The biker near the fence, clotheslined by a steel cable Ethan had set up earlier. The one sneaking through the fields, tripped by a hidden pit, knocked unconscious before he can call for help. Another biker, desperate, rushes into the barn, only to find himself locked inside. From victorious hunters, the bikers have become prey. Panic spreads. They start realizing the truth. This isn't some helpless farmer. This is a man who has seen war. This is a man who was ready for them before they even arrived. And now, there's only one left standing, Riker. Riker stands in the middle of the field, breathing hard, watching as his men are defeated one by one. This was supposed to be easy. Now, he's alone. And Ethan? Ethan walks toward him, calm, steady, relentless. No gun, no weapon, just his fists. You wanted this, Ethan says. So let's finish it. Riker lunges, throwing a wild punch. Ethan sidesteps effortlessly. Another punch. Ethan blocks. Then comes his counter. Riker stumbles, gasping, but Ethan doesn't let up. This isn't just about winning. This is about sending a message. The bikers wanted to humiliate him. Now Riker is the one on his knees. Bloodied, broken, defeated. Ethan crouches, gripping Riker's collar, pulling him close. You don't belong here. Riker, barely able to speak, nods frantically. The rest of the bikers, those still conscious, watch in horror as Ethan releases their leader and steps back. Not killing him. No, this is worse. Because now they'll live with the shame of what happened. The remaining bikers scramble to their bikes, dragging their unconscious friends, desperate to get away. Engines roar. And then, just like that, they're gone. Ethan stands in the wreckage of his land, the barn still smouldering, but his eyes remain calm. He doesn't need to chase them. They'll never come back. And if they do, he'll be ready. Dawn creeps over the horizon, painting the sky in muted gold. The smoke from the burned barn still lingers, curling toward the heavens like the ghosts of the night's battle. The once rowdy farmland is eerily silent. Then, sirens. The sheriff's patrol truck rumbles up the dirt road, its headlights cutting through the early morning mist. Deputy Holt jumps out first, gun drawn. Sheriff Dawson follows, his sharp eyes scanning the wreckage. They weren't sure what they'd find when they got the call. Some neighbors reported hearing gunfire, explosions, screaming. Now, they see the truth. And standing at the center of it all, Ethan. His shirt is torn, knuckles bruised, but his stance is solid, unshaken, like a warrior surveying the battlefield. Holt whistles low. Holy hell! Sheriff Dawson steps out, looking around, then back at Ethan. He knows exactly what happened, knows exactly who Ethan used to be. And just like that, the tension fades, because Dawson isn't here to arrest Ethan. He's here to make sure the man is all right. Dawson sighs, rubbing his temples. You always were a quiet one, Ethan. Figured you were trouble. Just didn't know it'd be this kind of trouble. Ethan shrugs. Didn't have much of a choice. The sheriff glances at the bikers, now being rounded up by deputies. Some of them are still out cold. Others are too scared to even move. Dawson chuckles. I don't think they'll be pressing charges. Riker, the once arrogant and untouchable leader of the gang, now looks like a man who's seen the gates of hell. Face bruised, ego shattered, as he's hauled to his feet by the deputies. He dares to look Ethan in the eyes. There's no hatred anymore, no rage, only fear. He licks his busted lip and spits blood into the dirt. You. His voice is raw. What the hell are you? Ethan steps forward, calm as ever. I'm just a man who wanted to be left alone. Riker flinches as Ethan closes the distance, his voice dropping to a low, final warning. Next time you think about hurting someone who never did you wrong, remember this night. A long, cold silence. Then Riker does the one thing no one ever expected from him. He nods. Not out of defiance, not out of arrogance, but out of understanding. And when the deputies shove him toward the patrol car, he doesn't resist, because he knows Ethan could have ended him, but he didn't, and that's a fate far worse than death. The next few days are a slow return to normal. The barn is gone, but the land still stands. The ashes will settle, and soon something new will grow. The fences are rebuilt, stronger this time. Lessons learned. The townspeople are different now. The fearful whispers are gone. Instead, when they look at Ethan, there's something else in their eyes. Respect. Even Sheriff Dawson, always a cautious man, tips his hat when he sees Ethan in town. Never thought I'd say this, he mutters one day, leaning on his truck, but I think we're safer with you around. Ethan doesn't respond. He just nods. That's all that needs to be said. One afternoon, as Ethan stands by the porch, watching the wind dance over his fields, a neighbor drives up. Old man Henry. He steps out, a couple of young farmhands following him. Figured you could use some help rebuilding, Henry says gruffly. We ain't much, but we owe you. Ethan looks at them, at the unspoken gratitude in their eyes. At first, he thinks about refusing, but then, for the first time in a long time, he smiles. Appreciate it. Life moves forward, not unchanged, but stronger. The farm remains standing. The land endures. And Ethan? He goes back to his quiet life, not because he's weak, not because he's afraid, but because he knows true strength isn't in how many fights you win. It's in knowing when to walk away, and when to stand your ground. Weeks later, the land is quiet again. The fields sway in the breeze, golden and endless under the morning sun. The scars from the attack, the broken fences, the burned barn, are all gone, rebuilt, stronger. Ethan sits on his porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The world is at peace, or so it seems. It arrives without warning, slipped under his door in the dead of night. No return address, no name, just a plain envelope, its edges slightly worn from travel. Ethan picks it up, turning it over. Something about it feels wrong. Slowly, he opens it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. 7 words. You think it's over. It's not. Ethan's fingers tighten around the paper. His eyes scan the tree line, the long stretch of road leading into town. Nothing. No movement. But he knows better. Someone is watching. A slow exhale leaves his lips. Not fear. Not anger. Just understanding. Because trouble always has a way of finding men like him. He folds the letter, tucking it into his pocket. If they come, they come. This time, he'll be ready. The sun rises higher. The farm stands unchanged. But Ethan, he knows. This isn't the end. It never is.